Have you ever heard economists use a word that just sounds bad? Like something's really, really wrong with the economy. Today, we're tackling one of those words, stagflation. It's a tricky concept, but understanding it is super important, especially given what's been happening with the US economy recently. So what is stagflation? Simply put, it's a bizarre and unwelcome combination of two things that usually don't happen at the same time: stagnant economic growth and rising inflation. Usually these two forces work against each other. When the economy is growing, prices tend to rise a bit, but that's generally considered healthy. And when inflation gets too high, the Federal Reserve often steps in to slow down the economy, which can lead to a recession, a slowdown in economic activity. But stagflation throws that relationship out the window. You get a sluggish or stalled economy along with persistently high inflation. Why is it so bad? Well, imagine this. You're trying to run a marathon, but you've got ankle weights on and someone keeps poking you with a stick. That's kind of what stagflation does to an economy. High inflation erodes your purchasing power, meaning your money doesn't go as far, but the stagnant economy means there are fewer jobs available and wages aren't increasing to keep up. It's a really tough situation for everyone. Let's break down how this can happen with a couple of simplified examples. Imagine a small town that relies heavily on a single industry, let's say apple farming. Normally, when apple harvests are good, the town thrives. People have jobs, businesses are busy, and prices are stable. But what if a new disease wipes out a large portion of the apple crop? Suddenly, apples become scarce and expensive. That's inflation kicking in. But at the same time, because there are fewer apples to sell, the local packing plant has to lay off workers. Businesses that depend on those workers, the diner, the hardware store, also start to suffer. The economy is slowing down, but prices are still going up. That's a simplified version of stagflation. Another example, think about oil prices. In the 1970s, the US experienced significant stagflation, largely triggered by oil shocks. OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, imposed an oil embargo, drastically reducing the supply of oil. This caused oil prices to soar. Higher oil prices affected everything: transportation, heating, manufacturing, leading to increased costs for businesses and consumers. But the higher prices also choked economic growth because people had less money to spend on other things. Businesses cut back on investment and unemployment rose. Why is stagflation so difficult to fix? Because the usual tools economists use to combat either inflation or recession don't work well when they happen together. If the Federal Reserve tries to lower inflation by raising interest rates, that can further slow down the already sluggish economy. If they try to stimulate the economy by lowering interest rates, that can worsen inflation. It's a really delicate balancing act. The 1970s are often cited as the prime example of stagflation in the US. High inflation, coupled with slow economic growth and rising unemployment, plagued the country for much of the decade. It took aggressive action by the Federal Reserve, including significantly raising interest rates, to finally break the cycle. But that came at a cost, a recession in the early 1980s. Now let's talk about the present day. After a period of relatively stable prices, the US experienced a surge in inflation in 2022 and 2023. While the economy continued to grow, there were growing fears that we might be heading towards stagflation. Supply chain disruptions caused by the pandemic, increased demand for goods, and the war in Ukraine all contributed to the inflationary pressures. The Federal Reserve responded by raising interest rates aggressively, attempting to cool down the economy and bring inflation under control. The key question became whether they could achieve this soft landing, bringing down inflation without triggering a recession. As of late 2023, the situation remains complex, with some signs of easing inflation but continued concerns about economic growth. So to recap, stagflation is the rare and unpleasant combination of slow economic growth and high inflation. It's difficult to fix because the usual economic tools don't work effectively when these two forces are at play simultaneously. The 1970s were a prime example, and the US has faced potential risks of stagflation more recently due to pandemic-related economic disruptions. Understanding this concept is crucial for interpreting economic news and understanding the challenges facing policymakers. It's not just a complicated economic term. It represents a real threat to financial stability and the well-being of individuals and families. Remember, this information is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as financial advice. Always consult with a qualified financial professional before making investment decisions.